I am Francisco, 35 years old, and I built my fitness equipment supply business from nothing into a successful company. My cousin Bradley and his wife Amber were like family to me until they asked me to co-sign a $500,000 loan for their dream gym. When I refused, they showed up at my house and things got violent. I never thought my own blood would physically attack me, but that night changed everything. Before I tell you how I went from being called family to having my own blood attack me in my living room, let me know where you are watching from, and hit that subscribe button if family drama gets your blood pumping too. Bradley and I grew up together in the same neighborhood in Portland. Only 2 years apart in age, we were more like brothers than cousins. Every summer was spent riding bikes, playing basketball at the local court, and as we got older, working out together. By 16, we were both obsessed with fitness. We transformed his parents' garage into a makeshift gym with second-hand equipment we saved for months to buy. Our shared passion for fitness continued through high school. While other kids were getting into trouble, we were designing workout plans and dreaming about owning our own gym someday. But even then, there were differences in how we approached things. I was methodical, researching proper form and nutrition, saving my money from my part-time job at a local grocery store. Bradley was more impulsive, always wanting the flashiest new equipment, without considering costs, often spending his entire paycheck from his weekend job on supplements or gear that would end up unused within weeks. After high school, I studied business management while working at a commercial gym to learn the industry from the inside. Bradley bounced between jobs, always talking about big plans but never settling on anything long-term. He worked at the same gym for a while, but got fired after repeatedly showing up late. Still, our bond remained strong. We still trained together whenever possible, and I always made time for him despite my increasingly busy schedule. My path was clear to me. I noticed a gap in the regional market for quality fitness equipment suppliers who understood what gym owners actually needed. With my combination of business education and practical fitness experience, I started small first as a middleman connecting gyms with manufacturers, working out of my apartment with just a laptop and a phone. By 27, I had built Francisco Fitness Supplies into a respected regional business with 6 employees and a warehouse. We specialized in sourcing, delivering, and installing commercial-grade equipment for gyms across 3 states. The work was hard, the hours were long, but watching my business grow made every sacrifice worthwhile. Meanwhile, Bradley continued drifting. He would get excited about new opportunities only to abandon them when they required real effort. Then, when he was 29, he met Amber at a supplement store where she worked. They hit it off immediately and were married within 6 months. At first, Amber seemed good for Bradley. She was energetic and ambitious with a background in personal training. She talked about her dreams of running her own fitness classes, and for the first time in years, Bradley seemed motivated. He landed a job as a sales representative for a sports nutrition company and held on to it longer than any previous position. I was genuinely happy for them and welcomed Amber into the family. I even helped them with the down payment on their first house as a wedding gift, believing they were finally getting their lives on track. Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs. Their wedding was extravagant, far beyond what either of them could afford. They honeymooned in Bali for 2 weeks, coming back with stories of luxury resorts and private tours all put on credit cards. Within a year of their marriage, the pattern became clear. Every few months, they would show off something new: designer workout clothes, a luxury car, expensive renovations to their home. When I asked Bradley how they were affording everything, he would vaguely mention bonuses or Amber picking up private clients, but their lifestyle clearly exceeded their income. At family gatherings, Amber would comment on my success, always with an undercurrent of envy. "Francisco must be rolling in money with that business of his," she would say to relatives, loud enough for me to hear. "Must be nice to have everything figured out so young." Bradley would laugh along, though I sometimes caught a glimpse of resentment in his eyes. Then 3 years ago, my parents passed away unexpectedly in a car accident. It was the hardest period of my life. They had been my biggest supporters, both emotionally and occasionally, with small loans during the early days of my business. They left me their home, a modest but well-maintained property in a nice part of town. I was grateful, but would have traded it in an instant to have them back. During the funeral and its aftermath, Bradley and Amber were surprisingly supportive. They helped with arrangements and seemed genuinely affected by the loss. In my grief, I interpreted this as a strengthening of our family bond. I did not recognize it as the beginning of their calculations. A month after the funeral, during a family dinner at my newly inherited home, Bradley brought up the subject of my parents' will. "So did they leave anything for the rest of the family?" he asked casually, as if inquiring about leftovers from dinner. I was taken aback. "No, Bradley. They left the house to me and some small savings that mostly covered funeral expenses." "That is a little unfair, do not you think?" Amber interjected. "Your parents always treated Bradley like a son, too." That comment stung, but I attributed it to poor timing rather than genuine entitlement. I changed the subject, not wanting conflict during a still painful time. But over the following months, similar comments surfaced. Bradley would reminisce about how my father had promised to help him start a business someday. Amber would remark on how much they loved the house and how it was too big for just one person. Around this time, they began talking about opening a gym. At first, it was just casual conversation during our less frequent training sessions. "Would not it be great to have our own place?" Bradley would say between sets. "Just like we talked about as kids." I was supportive, but cautious. "It is a tough business," I told him. "The startup costs are high, and most new gyms fail within 2 years." But as weeks passed, their casual mentions evolved into more concrete discussions. They started showing me pictures of commercial spaces for rent, asking about equipment costs, and discussing potential names for their gym. That is, when FitLife Revolution was born, at least on paper, their excitement was palpable, and I wanted to be encouraging. After all, this was the most direction Bradley had shown in years. What I did not realize then was that their vision was completely untethered from reality, and that they saw me as much more than a source of industry advice. In their minds, I was already the solution to the biggest obstacle in their plan: money. The night Bradley and Amber formally presented their gym idea started pleasantly enough. They invited me to dinner at an upscale restaurant downtown, insisting on paying despite my offers to cover the bill. "We are celebrating," Bradley announced as we sat down, ordering an expensive bottle of wine without even glancing at the price. Over appetizers, they unveiled their vision for FitLife Revolution. It would not be just any gym, they explained, but a premium fitness experience targeting high-end clients. They envisioned a 10,000-square-foot facility with state-of-the-art equipment, a juice bar, massage therapy rooms, a sauna, and multiple specialized studios for different class types. "We are thinking the Pearl District," Amber said, referring to one of Portland's most expensive neighborhoods. "The clientele there has the money and mindset for what we are offering." As someone who had worked with dozens of gym startups, I immediately saw problems with their plan. The location alone would command astronomical rent. The build-out they described would cost hundreds of thousands before they even opened their doors. And the market was already saturated with high-end fitness options. "Have you done any market research?" I asked. "That area already has 3 boutique fitness studios and a national chain within a few blocks." Bradley waved off my concern. "Those places are boring. No one is offering what we will offer." "And what is your startup budget looking like?" I asked. They exchanged glances before Amber answered, "We are figuring that part out, but we thought you could help us understand what equipment we would need." I agreed to share my knowledge, though I was already uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. Over the next 2 weeks, I met with them several times, going through realistic equipment needs and costs. I created spreadsheets showing various budget options from bare bones to premium setups. Even the most basic package I outlined would require at least $150,000 just for equipment. Their response: "This is great, but we are definitely going for the premium option. Our clients will expect the best." During these meetings, more red flags appeared. They had no business plan, no financial projections, and no clear understanding of operating expenses. When I raised concerns, they would respond with vague assurances about investors they were talking to, or how they planned to crush it with membership sales from day one. I suggested they start smaller, perhaps with a boutique studio focusing on personalized training, which would require less initial investment. "You can always expand as you establish your brand and client base," I advised. "That is thinking too small," Bradley said dismissively. "We need to make a big splash right from the start." Their vision continued to grow more elaborate with each meeting. Now they wanted custom lighting systems, branded apparel for sale, and a dedicated childcare area. They talked about hiring a staff of 15 from day one, including multiple front desk employees, cleaning crew, and specialized instructors. Meanwhile, they still had not secured a location, though they dragged me along to view spaces far above what any new gym business could reasonably afford. At one viewing in a prime corner location with floor-to-ceiling windows, Amber walked around the empty space, pointing to where everything would go. The main workout floor here, juice bar in that corner, massage rooms along that wall. Her eyes sparkled with excitement. The real estate agent mentioned the monthly rent, $12,000 plus triple net expenses. I pulled Bradley aside. This is almost $150,000 a year just in rent. That means you need to clear over $12,000 in profit each month, just to cover the space before equipment, staff, insurance, utilities. He frowned. You do not think we can make that much? Some of these fancy gyms charge $200 a month for memberships. Yes, but they have established brands and took years to build their client base, I explained, and their retention rates are typically low. Most people quit gym memberships within 3 months. But my realistic assessments were met with increasing frustration. After one particularly tense discussion about startup costs, Bradley snapped. If you do not believe in us, just say so. It is not about belief, I replied. It is about math. The numbers do not add up. Despite my concerns, I continued offering guidance, hoping they would eventually see reason. I introduced them to a friend who had successfully opened a small yoga studio, thinking her story of starting small and growing organically might resonate. Instead, they came away from the meeting complaining that her vision was uninspiring and her studio basic. Around this time, I discovered they had been telling family members that I was partnering with them on the gym. My aunt called to say how proud she was that I was helping Bradley achieve his dream. I had to awkwardly clarify that I was only providing advice, not investing or becoming a business partner. When I confronted Bradley about this, he shrugged it off. We just meant you were helping us plan. Do not be so sensitive. 5 months into their planning process, they still had no business loan, no signed lease, and no clear timeline. What they did have was a logo they had paid a designer $3,000 to create business cards, with no actual business address, and a growing impatience with my caution. Then came the dinner that would change everything between us. Bradley called on a Tuesday asking if they could come over to my house that Friday to finalize some details about the gym. His tone was different, more serious than usual. I agreed, suggesting I could grill some steaks. Actually, he said, Amber is preparing something special. We will bring everything. There was an undercurrent of excitement in his voice that made me uneasy. I should have trusted that feeling, because that Friday night their true intentions would finally be laid bare, and our relationship would never be the same. Bradley and Amber arrived at my house that Friday evening, carrying grocery bags and a bottle of expensive champagne. Amber immediately took over my kitchen, preparing an elaborate meal, while Bradley set the table with uncharacteristic care. The atmosphere felt staged, like they were buttering me up for something. After dinner, as we moved to the living room with our drinks, Bradley cleared his throat. So, Francisco, we have been doing a lot of work on the gym plan. Great, I said cautiously. Have you revised the budget like we discussed? Actually, Amber interjected, we have secured a perfect location. That corner space in the Pearl we looked at. We can sign the lease next week. I was stunned. But that space is $12,000 a month. How can you possibly afford that without any investor backing? Bradley leaned forward, placing a folder on the coffee table. That is what we wanted to talk to you about. We have been pre-approved for a business loan of $500,000. My stomach dropped. Even with my successful business, I would think twice about taking on that level of debt for a new venture. That is a serious loan, I said carefully. What bank approved that based on your current income? They exchanged glances before Amber replied. Well, there is just one final step in the approval process. Bradley slid the folder toward me. We need a co-signer, someone with established business credit and assets. And there it was. The real reason for the fancy dinner, the champagne, the weeks of including me in their planning. They did not want my expertise. They wanted my financial backing. You want me to co-sign a $500,000 loan for your gym? I asked incredulously. It is not like you would actually have to pay anything, Amber said quickly. The business will cover all the payments. You are just helping us get approved." I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. "Do you understand what co-signing means? If your business fails to make those payments for any reason, I would be legally responsible for the entire amount. My business, my home, my savings would all be at risk." "But it will not fail," Bradley insisted. "We have everything planned out now." "No, you do not," I replied firmly. "You have a vision, not a plan. You have no experience running a business, no client base, and the market research I tried to show you indicates the area is already oversaturated with fitness options." I spent the next hour explaining in detail why I could not take this risk. I walked them through realistic projections of gym membership acquisition rates, retention challenges, and ongoing expenses. I showed them statistics on new gym failure rates and explained how even successful gyms often take years to become profitable. "I care about you both," I concluded, "and I want to see you succeed. But this plan, at this scale with this much debt, is setting you up for failure. And I cannot put my financial future on the line for a business venture that has such a high probability of failing." The disappointment on their faces was painful to see, but I stood firm. Eventually, Bradley nodded slowly. "I understand," he said quietly. "We ask too much. Let us just forget about it." Amber was less accepting, but seemed to respect my decision. "We will figure something out," she said tightly. They left shortly after, and I felt a mix of relief and guilt. I truly wanted to help them, but not in a way that could financially ruin all of us. I hoped they would reconsider their approach and perhaps start with something more realistic. But that hope was short-lived. 3 days later, my phone began buzzing with messages from family members. My aunt called asking why I was blocking Bradley's dream when I had so much money. An uncle texted that family should support family. Even cousins I rarely spoke with were suddenly reaching out suggesting I was being selfish. It became clear that Bradley and Amber had spread their version of events throughout the family, painting me as a wealthy businessman who refused to help his struggling cousin achieve his lifelong dream. They conveniently left out the size of the loan, the high risk involved, and my legitimate concerns about their business plan. At the next family gathering, a birthday party for another cousin, the tension was palpable. Several relatives greeted me coldly or avoided me altogether. Bradley and Amber arrived late, making a show of barely acknowledging me. Throughout the event, I overheard snippets of conversations about me, words like selfish and forgotten where he came from. When I tried to speak privately with Bradley to clear the air, he was dismissive. "Look, we get it. Your money is more important than family." Message received. "That is not fair," I protested. "I offered to help you create a more realistic plan, maybe even invest a reasonable amount as a partner if we could develop something sustainable." "We do not need your charity," Amber cut in, having appeared at Bradley's side. "Some people actually believe in us." She tugged on Bradley's arm, pulling him away before I could respond. The next few weeks brought escalating pressure. Anonymous messages appeared on my business social media accounts, claiming I exploited family connections to build my company but refused to give back. The messages were clearly from them, or at least inspired by them, though I had no concrete proof. Bradley's parents, my aunt and uncle, called me directly, appealing to my sense of family obligation. "Your parents would have wanted you to help Bradley," my aunt said, invoking my deceased parents in a way that felt particularly manipulative. Through mutual friends, I learned that Bradley and Amber had already made commitments based on securing this loan. They had verbally agreed to lease terms, reached out to equipment suppliers, my competitors, not my company, and even begun designing expensive branded merchandise. Despite the pressure, I maintained my position. I even consulted with a financial advisor who confirmed my concerns were valid. Co-signing a loan of that size for an unproven business concept run by inexperienced owners would be extremely risky, he told me, especially in the fitness industry, which has a particularly high failure rate. I attempted one more reconciliation, inviting Bradley out for coffee to discuss alternative approaches. He agreed to meet, but spent the entire time checking his phone and giving one-word answers. When I suggested again that they start smaller, perhaps with a specialized studio concept requiring less initial investment, he snorted derisively. "Still trying to shrink our vision to match your limited imagination," he said, standing up to leave after barely 15 minutes. "We do not need your permission to succeed, Francisco." I was left wondering how our relationship had deteriorated so dramatically. The cousin who had been like a brother to me now seemed like a stranger, his wife's influence and their shared delusions of grandeur transforming him into someone I barely recognized. Then came the night that would sever our relationship completely and show me exactly who they had become. It was a Tuesday evening in November. Outside rain pelted against the windows of my home as I reviewed quarterly projections from my business at the dining room table. The sound of an engine in my driveway caught my attention, but I assumed it was a delivery or a neighbor until the aggressive pounding on my front door made it clear this was no routine visit. I opened the door to find Bradley and Amber standing there, both visibly agitated. Bradley's face was flushed and I could smell alcohol on his breath. Amber stood slightly behind him, arms crossed, her expression cold and determined. "We need to talk," Bradley said, pushing past me into the entryway without waiting for an invitation. Surprised but trying to stay calm, I closed the door against the rain and followed them into my living room, where they had already positioned themselves standing rather than sitting, a confrontational stance that immediately put me on edge. "What is going on?" I asked. "You could have called first." "We are done playing games," Amber declared. "You need to step up and help us secure this loan." I sighed, frustrated that we were back to this topic again. I thought I made my position clear. I cannot co-sign a loan of that size for your gym concept. The risk is too high. Bradley stepped closer to me, his body language increasingly aggressive. "You know what I think. I think you do not want us to succeed. You like being the big success story in the family. You like looking down on us." "That is ridiculous," I replied, maintaining my distance. "I have always supported you, Bradley. I have spent hours trying to help you develop a viable business plan." "A smaller plan," Amber interjected bitterly. "A lesser plan, because you do not think we can handle something big." "It is not about what you can handle," I explained for what felt like the 100th time. "It is about market realities and financial prudence. Even established gym chains struggle to stay profitable." Bradley's face darkened. "Financial prudence. Listen to yourself. You sound like some corporate robot. What happened to family? What happened to the cousin who said we would always have each other's backs?" "Having your back does not mean making financially irresponsible decisions that could ruin all of us," I countered. "If this fails, and statistically it probably would, I would be liable for $500,000. Do you understand what that would do to me, to my business, to my employees who depend on me for their livelihoods?" "Oh, poor successful Francisco," Amber mocked, always thinking about his precious business. "You inherited this house from your parents. You got help starting your company. But when we ask for help, suddenly it is all about risk management." Her comment about my parents stung, particularly the implication that my success was primarily due to inheritance, rather than years of hard work and careful planning. "My parents left me this house, yes," I said, my voice hardening. "But my business I built from nothing with 16-hour days and reinvesting every penny of profit for years. They helped with a small loan at the beginning, which I repaid with interest." "And now you cannot extend the same courtesy to family?" Bradley demanded, taking another step toward me. He was now close enough that I could see the veins pulsing in his neck, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "This is not a small loan to help start a business," I replied, standing my ground. "This is co-signing for $500,000 for a concept that has no proven viability." "We have been planning this for months," Bradley shouted, his voice echoing through the room. "We found the perfect location, we designed the entire concept. And now, it is all going to fall apart because you are too selfish to sign a piece of paper." I took a deep breath, trying to de-escalate the situation. "Look, I understand you are disappointed, but getting angry will not change the financial realities here. Why do not we sit down, have a drink, and talk about alternatives?" "There are no alternatives," Amber hissed. "That space will be gone by next week if we do not sign the lease. All our planning wasted because of you." Bradley was now literally shaking with rage, his face inches from mine. "You know what? You are not family. Family supports each other. Family believes in each other. You are just a selfish businessman who forgot where he came from." I stepped back, creating space between us. "I think you both need to leave. We can talk when you are calmer, but this conversation is not productive." What happened next still plays in my mind in slow motion. Bradley's expression shifted from anger to something darker, more primal. Without warning, he shoved me hard, sending me stumbling backward into my coffee table. "Bradley," I shouted, regaining my balance. "What the hell are you doing?" Instead of answering, he lunged forward again, this time swinging his fist toward my face. I managed to partially block the blow, but his knuckle still connected with my cheekbone, sending a shock of pain through my skull. Instinctively, I pushed him away, trying to create distance rather than escalate the violence. "Stop this. Get out of my house now." But Bradley was beyond reasoning. He came at me again, grabbing the front of my shirt and trying to throw me to the ground. We grappled in the middle of my living room, knocking over a lamp and sending books scattering from a side table. What shocked me even more than Bradley's attack was Amber's participation. Rather than trying to stop her husband, she circled around us, picking up a heavy decorative vase from a shelf. "You ruined everything," she screamed, swinging the vase toward my head as I struggled with Bradley. I managed to duck, causing her to miss and hit Bradley's shoulder instead. He grunted in pain but did not release his grip on me. The next minutes were chaos. I defended myself as best I could, trying to subdue Bradley without causing serious harm, all while avoiding Amber's continued attempts to hit me with whatever objects she could grab. A picture frame shattered against the wall. A chair toppled over. My forearm took a blow from something heavy, sending searing pain up to my shoulder. Finally, I managed to break free long enough to grab my phone from the dining table. "I am calling the police," I announced, breathing heavily. "This ends now." The mention of police seemed to penetrate Bradley's rage somewhat. He stood in the middle of my destroyed living room chest, heaving a thin line of blood trickling from his lip where I had landed a defensive blow. "Go ahead, Amber." Spat, though I could see fear replacing anger in her eyes. "Tell them how you refuse to help family. Tell them how you are hoarding all your money while we struggle. I will tell them you broke into my home and assaulted me." I replied evenly, already dialing 911, and they can see the evidence for themselves. As the dispatcher answered, Bradley and Amber exchanged glances. Something passed between them, a silent communication that seemed to deflate their remaining fight. "This is not over," Bradley said quietly as I began reporting the incident. But his words lacked conviction now, the reality of their actions beginning to sink in. By the time I finished giving my address to the dispatcher, they were heading for the door. I did not try to stop them, knowing the police would arrive soon, and preferring to have them gone than risk another physical confrontation. I stood in my destroyed living room, phone still in hand, tasting blood from a cut inside my cheek, my body throbbing from multiple impacts. The house that had once been my parents' home, a place of warmth and family gatherings, now bore the scars of violence and betrayal. And as the adrenaline began to fade, replaced by a deep, aching sadness, I knew that nothing between us would ever be the same again. The police arrived within 20 minutes, finding me sitting on the steps outside my front door, holding a bag of frozen peas against my swelling face. The rain had stopped, but everything was still wet, glistening under the porch light as two officers approached cautiously. "Are you the homeowner?" the taller officer asked, introducing himself as Officer Ramirez. I nodded, wincing at the movement. "Francisco Alvarez. I called about the assault." They took my statement as I led them through the house, documenting the destruction with photos and careful notes. Shattered glass crunched under our feet as we walked through the living room. The overturned furniture, broken decorations, and spots of blood on the carpet told a clear story of violence. "And you say this was your cousin and his wife, Officer Chang?" the second officer asked as she photographed a broken picture frame, the family photo inside, now cracked diagonally. "Yes, Bradley and Amber Mitchell. We had a disagreement about a business matter and they showed up unannounced. Bradley attacked me first and then Amber joined in. I showed them my injuries, a cut and bruise on my cheekbone, scratches along my arms, a rapidly forming bruise on my ribs, and a swollen wrist that throbbed painfully when moved. Officer Ramirez suggested I get medical attention, which I agreed to once we finished the report. "Do you want to press charges?" Officer Chang asked directly. The question gave me pause. Despite everything, Bradley was still family. We had grown up together, shared dreams, supported each other through difficult times. But looking around at my destroyed home, feeling the physical pain of their attack, I knew this had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. "Yes," I said firmly. "I want to press charges." The officers nodded without judgment. They took detailed contact information for Bradley and Amber, along with their physical descriptions and vehicle information. Before leaving, Officer Ramirez handed me a case number and his card. "We will be looking for them," he assured me. "In the meantime, if they return, do not engage. Call 911 immediately." After they left, I drove myself to the emergency room. The doctor confirmed no serious injuries, but documented everything for the police report: mild concussion, bruised ribs, sprained wrist, multiple contusions. I was given pain medication, told to rest, and sent home with forms that would later become evidence. The next morning, I received a call from Officer Chang, informing me that Bradley and Amber had been arrested at their home. They were being charged with breaking and entering, assault and battery, and destruction of property. The reality of the situation hit me fully then. My cousin was in jail because of his actions against me. My phone began buzzing constantly with messages from family members. Word had spread quickly, and the family was dividing into factions. Bradley's parents called, leaving a voicemail that alternated between pleading and accusatory. "How could you do this to your own cousin?" My aunt's voice trembled. "He made a mistake, but putting him in jail. That is not what family does to family." Other relatives sent similar messages, many without even asking for my side of the story. The narrative forming in certain circles was that I had somehow provoked the attack or was blowing a minor disagreement out of proportion. But not everyone turned against me. My uncle Robert, my father's brother, called to offer support. "I heard what happened," he said gravely. "Are you all right?" When I explained the full situation, including the loan request and subsequent pressure campaign, he sighed heavily. "Bradley always had an entitlement problem," he admitted. "And that wife of his only made it worse. You did the right thing, Francisco, both in refusing the loan and pressing charges." His support meant more than I could express, a small lifeline of family connection when so many others were cutting ties. 3 days after the incident, I received notice of a temporary restraining order hearing. My attorney, whom I had retained immediately after the attack, explained that this would formalize legal protection against Bradley and Amber approaching me or my property. The day of the hearing was tense. I arrived at the courthouse early, my wrist still in a brace, the bruise on my face faded to a yellowish purple. Bradley and Amber entered separately with their attorney, avoiding eye contact with me. They looked smaller, somehow subdued by the gravity of the legal proceedings. The judge reviewed the police reports, medical documentation, and my testimony. Bradley's attorney tried to characterize the incident as a family disagreement that got out of hand, suggesting that I had also been physically aggressive. When my turn came to speak, I stuck to the facts. "Your Honor, I did not invite them to my home that night. They arrived unannounced, demanded I co-sign a large loan, and when I refused, they became violent. I defended myself, but did not initiate any physical contact." The judge granted the restraining order prohibiting Bradley and Amber from coming within 500 feet of me, my home, or my business for 1 year. As we left the courtroom, I caught Bradley staring at me, his expression unreadable. Amber pulled him away before any words could be exchanged. The criminal charges proceeded more slowly. There were preliminary hearings, discussions of plea deals, and constant pressure from family members to drop the charges. My aunt left tearful voicemails describing how an assault conviction would ruin Bradley's life. My uncle, her husband, took a different approach, leaving threatening messages, suggesting I would regret tearing the family apart. I saved every message, every text, every voicemail, providing them to both the police and my attorney. The harassment eventually resulted in the restraining order being expanded to include Bradley's parents. Throughout this period, my isolation from much of the extended family deepened. Holiday invitations disappeared. Group chats fell silent when I joined. At a cousin's wedding, I was seated at a table with distant acquaintances rather than family members, a clear message about my new status as an outsider. The criminal case finally concluded 6 months after the attack. Bradley accepted a plea deal for misdemeanor assault and criminal mischief, receiving 12 months of probation, mandatory anger management classes, and community service. Amber, who had a less direct role in the physical attack, received 6 months of probation and community service. Both were ordered to pay restitution for the damage to my home. The day the case closed, I felt no triumph, only a hollow sadness for what had been lost. The cousin who had been like a brother was now legally prohibited from speaking to me. The family that had once gathered for joyful celebrations was splintered perhaps irreparably. That night alone in my repaired but somehow different feeling home, I poured myself a glass of whiskey and raised it in a silent toast to my parents. I wondered what they would have thought of everything that had happened if they would have understood my decisions. As the amber liquid burned down my throat, I promised myself that I would not let this experience harden me completely. I would move forward, focus on my business, and rebuild the parts of my life that had been damaged in ways no court could address. What I did not realize then was that Bradley and Amber's troubles were just beginning, and that our paths would cross again in ways I could never have anticipated. About 2 months after the court case concluded, I received a surprising call from Thomas, an equipment supplier I had worked with for years. He knew about my personal situation with Bradley, as news had traveled quickly through our tight-knit industry. "I thought you should know Thomas," said. "Your cousin and his wife were in my showroom yesterday. They are still trying to open that gym." I was genuinely shocked. After everything that happened, how could they possibly secure financing? Thomas hesitated before continuing. "From what I gathered, they have taken out multiple personal loans. They mentioned something about a second mortgage on their house, too." This news troubled me deeply. Despite everything, I did not wish financial ruin upon them. Taking on massive personal debt for a business venture that was already shaky at best seemed like a recipe for disaster. Over the following weeks, I heard similar reports from various industry contacts. Bradley and Amber had somehow pieced together financing through a patchwork of high-interest loans, credit cards, and what I later discovered was a loan from Bradley's parents, who had taken out a home equity line of credit to help. To them, they had also drastically scaled back their original vision. Instead of the luxury facility in the Pearl District, they leased a much smaller space in a less desirable part of town. Rather than top-of-the-line equipment, they purchased mostly second-hand machines. The Fit Life revolution was being born, but as a pale shadow of their original grandiose vision. I maintained my distance, respecting the restraining order and having no desire to reconnect. But through mutual acquaintances and industry gossip, I tracked their progress with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Their gym opened 4 months later with a small mention in a local fitness blog. The photos showed a space that was decent but unremarkable, nothing that would stand out in Portland's saturated fitness market. Bradley and Amber smiled stiffly in the promotional pictures standing in front of their logo, which was the only element that retained the extravagance of their original plan. A complex design in metallic colors that must have cost far more than their budget should have allowed. Within 2 months of opening, the problems began. A former employee of mine who had briefly worked at their gym reported that membership sales were far below projections. They expected to have 300 members by now, he told me, over coffee. They have maybe 60, and half of those are on deeply discounted promotional rates. Meanwhile, Bradley's legal troubles had professional consequences. His probation and criminal record made him ineligible for his sales position at the sports nutrition company, which had strict policies about employee criminal backgrounds. He lost his job, leaving Amber to run the struggling gym while he unsuccessfully sought new employment. Rather than adjusting their lifestyle to match their new financial reality, Amber continued their pattern of excessive spending. My Uncle Robert, who remained one of my few family allies, reported seeing her driving a new luxury SUV just weeks after Bradley lost his job. "They are keeping up appearances," he said with a shake of his head. "But everyone can see it is just a facade now." 6 months after opening, Fit Life Revolution began showing clear signs of distress. Their social media posts became increasingly desperate, offering extreme discounts and improbable promotions. Buy 1 month, get 3 free. Refer a friend, both get 6 months half off. These were not the strategies of a successful fitness business, but the death throes of a failing one. I heard through industry channels that they had started selling off equipment to cover operating expenses, creating a deteriorating experience for their few loyal members. The smoothie bar never materialized. The promised massage therapy rooms remained empty, unused spaces that represented dreams beyond their reach. Around this time, I received an unexpected email from a bank representative. As part of my business, I occasionally financed equipment for gym owners, and the representative thought I might be interested in an upcoming foreclosure auction. The property in question, Bradley and Amber's house. The email confirmed what I had suspected. They had leveraged everything on their doomed business venture and were now losing it all. Despite our bitter history, I felt no satisfaction in their downfall, only sadness at the predictable outcome of their poor decisions. 9 months after opening FitLife Revolution closed its doors permanently. A paper sign taped to the entrance simply read, "Closed for renovations," but everyone in the industry knew they would never reopen. They had lasted less than a year, becoming another statistic in the high failure rate of new gym businesses. In the aftermath, I learned through family channels that Bradley and Amber had separated. The stress of financial ruin and public failure had fractured their relationship beyond repair. Amber had moved in with her parents in Seattle, while Bradley was staying on a friend's couch unemployed and now saddled with massive debt. Their house sat empty for 2 months as the foreclosure process moved forward. Driving by it occasionally, I noticed the gradual signs of abandonment: uncollected mail, overgrown lawn, drawn blinds collecting dust. It was a physical manifestation of their shattered dreams. When the foreclosure auction was finally held, I attended out of curiosity more than any specific intention. The house was being sold at a significant discount, reflecting both the poor maintenance and the general knowledge that it was a distress sale. As the bidding began, I found myself raising my hand, then raising it again as others dropped out. By the end of the auction, I had purchased my cousin's former home for 30% below market value. As I signed the paperwork, I was not entirely sure why I had done it. Perhaps it was a form of closure. Perhaps it was simply a good business decision, an investment property acquired at an advantageous price. Or perhaps in some complex way, it was about reclaiming something that had been tainted by conflict and betrayal. Whatever the reason, I now held the deed to the house that Bradley and Amber had once believed would be just the beginning of their empire, and later the house they thought they would inherit from my parents, along with the rest of their estate. The irony was not lost on me, though it brought no particular pleasure. As I walked through the empty rooms after receiving the keys, I found remnants of their hasty departure. A wedding photo left behind, bills marked "Final Notice" stuffed in a kitchen drawer, a business plan for FitLife Revolution printed on expensive paper and abandoned in the home office. These fragments told the story of ambition untethered from reality, of desires unmatched by discipline or planning. Meanwhile, my own business continued to thrive despite the family drama. I had secured several major contracts with regional fitness chains, expanded my warehouse space, and hired 3 new employees. The work I had put into building something sustainable was paying dividends, creating a stark contrast to Bradley and Amber's failed venture. As I locked up my newly acquired property, I reflected on the strange path that had led us here. Bradley and Amber had wanted a shortcut to success, believing they deserved the rewards without putting in the work or accepting the risks themselves. They had tried to use family ties as leverage rather than building something through their own efforts. And in the end, they had lost everything, while I now literally held the keys to what had once been theirs. It was not the outcome anyone would have chosen, but it contained lessons that could not be ignored about patience, planning, and the true meaning of success. 6 months after purchasing Bradley and Amber's foreclosed home, I found myself standing in its empty living room contemplating what to do with the property. I had initially bought it as an investment, intending to renovate and either sell or rent it out. But as time passed, I realized this house represented something more significant than a simple business transaction. After careful consideration, I decided to transform it into something positive. The 3-bedroom home had good bones and was located in a neighborhood with several young families. I partnered with a local nonprofit that helped first-time homebuyers with limited incomes achieve stable housing. Through this organization, I would sell the house at a significant discount to a deserving family, with the nonprofit providing financial education and support throughout the process. This decision brought me a sense of peace that had been missing since the night of the attack. Converting a symbol of family conflict into an opportunity for another family felt right away to release the negative energy the property had come to represent. The physical wounds from Bradley and Amber's attack had long since healed, but the emotional damage took longer to address. I began seeing a therapist, something I had never considered before, to process the betrayal and violence from people I had once trusted completely. Family estrangement is a special kind of grief, my therapist explained during one session. You are mourning people who are still alive but no longer in your life. Those words resonated deeply. Despite everything, there were moments I missed the Bradley. I had grown up with the cousin who had spotted me during workouts and celebrated my early business successes. That person seemed gone forever, replaced by someone driven by entitlement and resentment. Rebuilding relationships with the rest of the family happened gradually. My Uncle Robert became a bridge, hosting small gatherings where neutral relatives could reconnect with me without the pressure of taking sides. At first, these events were awkward conversations, carefully avoiding any mention of Bradley or Amber, but over time a new normalcy emerged. My aunt and Uncle Bradley's parents remained distant. I heard through family channels that they had also suffered financially, having loaned Bradley and Amber substantial sums they would never recover. Their home equity line of credit taken out to support the gym venture had put their retirement at risk. While I felt sympathy for their situation, I recognized that maintaining distance was healthiest for everyone involved. The experience changed my approach to business in unexpected ways. I became more formal with contracts, even with people I trusted, ensuring all agreements were properly documented. But I also became more generous with my knowledge, establishing a mentorship program for young entrepreneurs in the fitness industry. Success is not just about avoiding mistakes, I would tell my mentees. It is about making the right kind of mistakes, the ones you can learn and recover from. I shared the story of Bradley and Amber's gym venture as a case study with names changed to protect their privacy. The lessons were valuable: the dangers of overextension, the importance of market research, the need for realistic financial projections, and the risks of mixing family and business without clear boundaries. My business continued to grow, expanding into 2 additional states and diversifying into gym management software alongside equipment supply. The challenges with Bradley had forced me to focus more intensely on what I had built, strengthening rather than weakening my commitment to my company. As for Bradley and Amber, their paths diverged completely. I heard through family that their divorce had been finalized, bitter and contentious, despite having few assets left to divide. Amber had moved permanently to Seattle, working as a personal trainer at a commercial gym, a far cry from the luxury fitness empire she had envisioned. Bradley had eventually found work at a sporting goods store, living in a small apartment, and struggling under the weight of his remaining debt. We never spoke directly again. The restraining order eventually expired, but neither of us made any attempt to reconnect. Some bridges once burned cannot be rebuilt, and sometimes that is for the best. About a year after purchasing their house, I received an unexpected letter from Bradley. It was brief, just a few paragraphs, but contained something I had never expected: an apology. "I will not ask for your forgiveness," he wrote. "What Amber and I did that night was unforgivable. But I want you to know that I recognize how wrong we were, not just about the attack, but about everything. You tried to help us build something realistic, and we were too arrogant to listen. I am sorry for the pain we caused you, and for destroying our relationship. I hope you are well." The letter came with no return address and no request for a response. It seemed to be offered without expectation, a simple acknowledgement of truth that had taken him years to reach. I never replied, not out of anger, but because there seemed nothing more to say. The apology provided a form of closure, a final period at the end of a painful chapter. I kept the letter in my desk drawer, occasionally rereading it as a reminder of how quickly relationships can change, and how important it is to stand firm when your instincts tell you something is wrong. The house was eventually sold to a young couple with twin daughters, both parents working in education with modest but stable incomes. When I handed them the keys at closing, the mother tearfully explained that they had never thought homeownership would be possible for them in Portland's expensive market. "This is going to change our children's future," she said, clutching the keys. "You have no idea what this means to us." But I did understand. I knew exactly how foundations built on solid ground could support generations to come, and how those built on entitlement and shortcuts would inevitably collapse. Today, 3 years after that violent night in my living room, I can look back with clarity rather than pain. The experience taught me that true family is defined by respect and support, not just shared blood. It showed me that success built methodically, brick by brick, can withstand storms that would demolish empires built on sand. And it reinforced my belief that standing firm for your principles, even when it costs you relationships, is ultimately the only way to live with integrity. I still work hard, still enjoy building my business, still take pride in helping others achieve their fitness industry goals the right way. But I also make more time for the people who truly support me, who value me for who I am rather than what I can provide them. That might be the most valuable lesson of all. Have you ever had to stand your ground against family pressure? I would love to hear your experiences in the comments below. Family dynamics can be incredibly complicated, especially when money gets involved. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life stories about setting boundaries and standing up for yourself. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that ultimately lead to the most personal growth.